The Knights Templar was a large organization of devout Christians during the medieval era. They were founded around 1118 by a French knight named Hugues de Payon. The order was created with a mission to protect European travelers visiting sites in the Holy Land. They also carried out military operations. The Knights Templar originated from Jerusalem. After Christian armies captured Jerusalem from Muslim control in 1099 during the Crusades, groups of pilgrims from across Western Europe started visiting the Holy Land. Many of them were robbed and killed as they crossed through Muslim-controlled territories during their journey. To protect these pilgrims, Hugues de Payon created a military order along with 8 relatives and acquaintances. They called it the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ in the Temple of Solomon, later known simply as the Knights Templar. The Templars took their name from the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, which they were said to have occupied as their headquarters. The Knights Templar were involved in various activities. They set up a prosperous network of banks and gained enormous financial influence. Their banking system allowed religious pilgrims to deposit assets in their home countries and withdraw funds in the Holy Land. They also carried out military operations. The Knights Templar were answerable only to the Pope. In the year 1139, Pope Innocent II issued a papal bull that allowed the Knights Templar special rights. Among them, the Templars were exempt from paying taxes, permitted to build their oratories, and were held to no one's authority except the Pope's. The Knights Templar expanded rapidly throughout Western Europe. At the height of their influence, the Templars boasted a sizable fleet of ships, owned the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, and served as a primary bank and lending institution to European monarchs and nobles. By the late 13th century, the Knights numbered between 15,000 and 20,000. The Knights Templar were present in various countries. They established new chapters throughout Western Europe. The countries with a Templar presence included France, Jerusalem, England, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Tripoli, Antioch, Hungary, and Croatia. The Knights Templar, originally a military order formed during the Crusades, transitioned into a formidable financial institution with an expansive banking network across Europe and the Levant. Their banking endeavors stemmed from a practical need to support their military campaigns in the Holy Land, initially providing safe money transfers for pilgrims through the issuance of letters of credit. Over time, their services expanded to include loans to monarchs, nobles, and even the church, establishing them as trusted financial intermediaries. While their clientele initially consisted of knights, nobles, and clergy, they eventually catered to a broader range of clients, including merchants and pilgrims. Although the Templars did charge fees for their services, their primary motivation was to support their military operations rather than profit-seeking. However, their accumulation of wealth and influence led to suspicions of corruption and heresy, ultimately resulting in their suppression by King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V in the early 14th century. The Templars' decentralized banking operations were centered across various commanderies and preceptories, with their main headquarters in Paris known as the Temple. While the exact extent of their assets is uncertain, they were known to possess vast land, treasures, and investments, cementing their legacy as pioneers in medieval European finance. The Templars' banking system was not only crucial for facilitating safe money transfers, but also for providing a form of early international banking. They established a network of branches and affiliates across key European cities in the Holy Land, allowing for efficient financial transactions across long distances. Their banking activities included not only loans but also deposit taking and currency exchange services. Pilgrims could deposit funds with the Templar commandery in their home country and then withdraw the equivalent amount in the Holy Land, reducing the risk associated with carrying large sums of money during their travels. In addition to financial services, the Templars also engaged in various commercial activities, such as trade and agriculture, further contributing to their wealth and influence. They owned extensive estates and agricultural lands, which provided a stable source of income alongside their banking operations. The controversy surrounding the Templars' banking system often revolved around accusations of usury and financial exploitation. While there is historical debate about the validity of these claims, they were instrumental in shaping public perception and ultimately contributed to the downfall of the order. The Templars' headquarters in Paris, known as the Temple, served as the administrative and financial center of the order. It housed their treasury and archives and served as a residence for the order's leaders and members. While the exact amount of assets managed by the Templars is difficult to ascertain due to limited historical records, contemporary accounts suggest that they were one of the wealthiest and most influential institutions of their time. Their vast holdings included land, precious metals, jewels, and other valuable assets, making them a significant force in medieval European finance and politics. King Philip IV of France, also known as Philip the Fair, held significant grievances against the Knights Templar, which led to their eventual demise. One primary issue was Philip's substantial debt to the Templars, accumulated from loans he had taken to finance his military endeavors and other expenses. This indebtedness placed Philip in a vulnerable position and made him dependent on the Templars for financial support. Moreover, Philip perceived the Templars as a threat to his authority and autonomy due to their immense wealth, extensive international network, and formidable military capabilities. Seeking to eliminate his debt and consolidate his power, Philip devised a cunning plan to discredit and destroy the order. Collaborating with Pope Clement V, who initially hesitated to take action against the Templars but eventually yielded to Philip's pressures, the king orchestrated a meticulously coordinated campaign against the Templars. In the year 1307, Philip ordered the simultaneous arrest of numerous Templar leaders throughout France, accusing them of various crimes, including heresy and sodomy. Before Pope Clement V ascended to the papacy, he was born as Bertrand de Goux, a French nobleman from the region of Gascony. He served as Archbishop of Bordeaux and was known for his diplomatic skills and connections within the French court. King Philip IV of France exerted significant influence over the papal election of the year 1305, ensuring the selection of Bertrand de Goux as Pope Clement V. Philip saw in Clement a pliable ally who would support his political ambitions and help him consolidate power. Philip's support during the papal conclave and subsequent backing of Clement's candidacy secured his election to the papacy. Once elected Pope, Clement V found himself indebted to King Philip IV for his support. Philip wielded his influence over the papacy to further his agenda, including the suppression of the Knights Templar. Philip pressured Clement to take action against the Templars, accusing them of heresy and other crimes. While Clement initially resisted Philip's demands and expressed reluctance to move against the Templars, he eventually succumbed to the king's pressures. Under threat of royal intervention and coercion, Clement acquiesced to Philip's wishes and cooperated in the suppression of the Templars. In addition to his involvement in the suppression of the Knights Templar, Clement V's papacy was marked by his own close alignment with the French crown. He moved the papal court from Rome to Avignon in the year 1309, a decision often referred to as the Avignon Papacy, or the Babylonian captivity of the Church, which further strengthened the papacy's ties to the French monarchy. Before his papacy, Bertrand de Goux had served as Archbishop of Bordeaux, a position that likely brought him into contact with King Philip IV and his court. While there is no direct evidence to suggest that Bertrand de Goux worked for the King of France in an official capacity before the expulsion of the Templars, his subsequent actions as Pope Clement V indicate a close relationship and alignment with Philip's interest. The Templars were subjected to brutal torture and interrogation, during which many confessed to fabricated charges under duress. In the year 1312, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the order through the papal bull Vox Excelso, thereby stripping the Templars of their legitimacy and authority. King Philip IV of France took decisive action against the Knights Templar by issuing orders of their arrest and suppression throughout the kingdom. In October 1307, Philip issued secret orders to his agents throughout France, instructing them to apprehend Templar leaders and seize their assets. Claims were made that during Templar admission ceremonies, recruits were forced to spit on the cross, deny Christ, and engage in indecent kissing. Brethren were also accused of idol worship, devil worship, and the order was said to have encouraged homosexual practices. The Templars were charged with numerous other offenses, such as financial corruption, fraud, and secrecy. Philip's decree led to the imprisonment, interrogation, and torture of numerous Templar members, including high-ranking officials and Grand Master Jacques de Molay. The Templars' properties, lands, and wealth were confiscated by the French crown and other secular authorities, effectively dismantling the order's financial and organizational structure. While the Templars were officially suppressed by Pope Clement V through the papal bull Vox Excelso in 1312, it was Philip IV's actions in France that initiated the process and led to the downfall of the order. Philip's decree effectively banned the Templars from operating in France and facilitated the seizure of their assets, marking the end of their presence and influence in the country. Other European monarchs, following the lead of the King of France, dissolved the order in their realms, but unlike in France, they chose not to impose capital punishment on the knights. Instead, they opted for a more lenient approach, refraining from executing Templars. Across Europe, outside of France, no Templar faced the death penalty. However, the order was uniformly disbanded and its considerable assets were seized. Despite widespread innocence in regions beyond the control of the Pope and the French monarchy, the order's dissolution was enforced. Others within the order were absorbed into other Catholic military orders or pensioned off and allowed to live out their days peacefully. By papal decree, the property of the Templars was transferred to the Knights Hospitaller except in the kingdoms of Castile, Aragon, and Portugal. Portugal was the first country in Europe where they had settled, occurring only 2 or 3 years after the order's foundation in Jerusalem and even having a presence during Portugal's conception. King Denis I of Portugal diverged from the approach of other monarchs influenced by Philip and the French crown by opting not to pursue and persecute the former Templar knights. Instead, he extended his protection to them. Under his patronage, Templar organizations transformed, changing their name from Knights Templar to the Reorganized Order of Christ. Additionally, a parallel institution known as the Supreme Order of Christ of the Holy See was established. Both of these entities are recognized as successors to the Knights Templar. The abrupt disbandment of the order in the year 1307 by King Philip IV of France has sparked legends of surviving Templars escaping to Scotland, purportedly carrying their treasure from France. Before their dissolution, the Knights Templar were active in Scotland, mainly functioning as landlords and moneylenders. Evidence of their presence in Scotland dates back to the year 1129, with several sites still standing today that are documented as part of the Templars' operations. Additionally, various locations have become linked with the myths and legends surrounding the Templars in Scottish history. It is important to know that there were Templars in Scotland since King David I of Scotland granted the order lands. The Temple in Midlothian was the main Scottish house of the Templars. The Knights Templars' presence in Scotland began after King Henry I of England arranged an introduction of the Templar founder Hugh de Payens to King David I of Scotland. The meeting was a success, and the Templars were given land south of Edinburgh that became known as Ballintroduch. The Knights Templar were not only warriors, but they were landlords and businessmen who owned over 500 sites in Scotland. Because of this, they became advisors to King David I and his successors. According to local legend, Templar treasure from Paris was hidden at Ballantrae. They had a saying, quote, "Twixt the oak and the elm tree, you will find buried the millions free." Determining who came first, Freemasons or Templars, might seem straightforward at first glance. The Knights Templar was established in the year 1118, while Freemasonry became publicly known in the early 18th century, creating a gap of 600 years between them. However, the reality is more complex. According to Masonic tradition, their origins trace back to the construction of the Temple of Solomon 3,000 years ago. Some Freemasons have even made more extraordinary claims about their antiquity. For instance, in a newspaper report from 1883, certain Masons ridiculed others within their ranks who suggested that Adam and Eve formed a lodge in the Garden of Eden, or that Noah established Freemasonry after the deluge, or even that Jesus, his disciples, and the Essenes were all Masons. Interestingly, there's a persistent theory suggesting that Freemasonry existed in the Muslim world 1,000 years ago, transmitted to the Templars during their crusades in the Middle East from Islamic rather than Christian sources. Proponents of this theory argue that Syrian influences shaped the Templar secret rituals and beliefs, further supporting this notion. Undoubtedly, the temple in Jerusalem holds significant importance in the histories and mysteries of both the Knights Templar and Freemasonry, not merely as a physical structure, but as a symbol with profound spiritual significance and the aspiration for its restoration to its former splendor. Central to Masonic beliefs in the narrative surrounding the construction and subsequent destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, King Solomon erected the original temple a millennium before Christ to house the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred vessel containing the 10 Commandments placed within the Holy of Holies. According to biblical accounts, entering this sacred chamber unauthorized would result in immediate death. However, Freemasonry adds a deeper layer to this biblical tale. They assert that Hiram Abiff, the master mason and chief architect of Solomon's temple, was murdered by 3 subordinate masons, Jubilo, Jubile, and Jubilum, because he refused to divulge the knowledge that would hasten their advancement within the craft. This grim event is ritually reenacted within Masonic ceremonies, symbolizing themes of courage and loyalty while emphasizing the absence of shortcuts to genuine wisdom. In the year 587 BC, Solomon's temple fell to the Babylonians, and the Ark of the Covenant vanished forever. Centuries later, King Herod reconstructed the temple on a grand scale, only for it to be demolished as punishment following the Jewish revolt against Roman rule between 66 and 70 AD. By the 7th century AD, Jerusalem had become part of the burgeoning Islamic Caliphate, leading to the transformation of the Temple Mount, what remained of Herod's temple, into a revered Muslim site with the construction of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Jumping ahead to the early 12th century, with Jerusalem under Christian control, the newly formed Knights Templar insisted on establishing their headquarters in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which they believed stood upon the ancient site of Solomon's temple. They adopted the name Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, abbreviated as Knights Templar. Thus, Jerusalem and its temple held pivotal significance for both the Knights Templar and Freemasons alike. In the year 1307, Pope Clement V initiated the banishment of the Knights Templar, marking the beginning of a tumultuous period of church trials and investigations culminating in the execution of the last Templar Grand Master. Over 4 centuries later, another pope bearing the same name, Pope Clement XII, issued a papal decree titled Eminenti Apostolatus Specula, prohibiting Roman Catholics from joining Freemason lodges. This stance has been reaffirmed by the Vatican as recently as 1983. Some skeptics argue that the papal prohibition on Catholic involvement in lodges stemmed from a concern that too many faithful were affiliating with the Freemasonry, potentially exposing them to anti-church political influences. Interestingly, a modern Catholic perspective suggests that the condemnations of Freemasonry mirror those used against the Albigensians, with the Church viewing Freemasonry as a form of heresy. This comparison is noteworthy, drawing parallels between Freemasons and medieval heretics. The Albigensians, also known as the Cathars, emerged during the era of the Templars. They rejected the Catholic sacraments and criticized the wealth of the Church in the Middle Ages, leading to a violent crusade in the 13th century to suppress them. Speculation persists regarding potential connections between the Knights Templar and the Cathars, raising questions about whether the Gnostic ideologies of the Cathars influenced the Templars' beliefs. Could Clement V have regarded the Templars as heretics in a similar manner to how Clement XII viewed Freemasons? Furthermore, Pope Clement XII and his successors were convinced that Freemasons admitted individuals from various religious backgrounds, including Jews, Muslims, and pagans, while treating all faiths equally, a notion antithetical to Vatican teachings. However, this perception was erroneous, as most lodges only accepted baptized Christians until the 19th century, when Jews and Muslims were more widely admitted into Freemasonry. In the late 19th century, Pope Pius IX exhibited intense hostility toward Freemasonry. As Italy underwent unification into the modern nation-state, the papal territories in central Italy were gradually annexed, culminating in the capture of Rome in the year 1870. Blaming Masonic influence for losing his secular domain, a furious Pope Pius accused Freemasonry of orchestrating the invasion. During this period, some Masonic supporters alleged that Pius harbored personal animosity towards Freemasons due to his alleged expulsion from a Masonic lodge in his youth. According to an early 1870s American publication, Mackey's National Freemason, Pius was purportedly expelled for violating his vows and committing perjury. Over the past 3 centuries, a significant corpus of literature has emerged advocating the notion of a shared history between the Knights Templar and Freemasons. However, delving further into the past reveals a lack of evidence to support such claims. Prior to this period, there was a noticeable absence of discourse on the subject, with the discussions between Masons and anti-Masons dominating recent historical narratives and overshadowing the silence that precedes them. The Freemasons have long been in search of a creation myth, and many contemporary Masons are quick to caution against interpreting their claim linked to the Knights Templar too literally. Perhaps they are wary of the potential scrutiny and ridicule such a connection might invite. However, while there may not be a formal association, and stories of fleeing Templars seeking refuge with stone Masons should be taken with a grain of salt, and then again don't take too much, there could still be a continuity in terms of shared ideas and values. There's also the element of revenge. It's an enticing and even amusing notion to entertain that the idea of Freemasons having sought retribution on behalf of the Templars. For instance, if Freemasons were indeed involved in the French Revolution and played a role in the execution of King Louis XVI, a descendant of King Philip of France, it would seem to fulfill the curse allegedly uttered by the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, as he met his demise by burning. Similarly, the extinguishing of the Papal States in the year 1870 could be seen as another instance of fulfilling a curse purportedly directed at the Pope by de Molay. Humanity lacks an incontrovertibly clear timeline that comprehensively lists all of the intertwinings between the fall of the Knights Templar and the rise of Freemasonry. Any assertion of such a claim demands undeniable, undisputed proof. Despite extensive research, I've found no peer-reviewed or otherwise credible sources detailing how remaining Knights Templars integrated themselves into Freemasonry. It's conceivable, that some did indeed make such a transition, but even then, there exists no explicit proof of records documenting who precisely undertook what during that period, casting doubt on the alleged transformation from being a Knight Templar to becoming a Freemason. All the information presented in this chapter is verifiable. That concludes today's discussion. Until next time.